Whoa, I like this meme a lot, by the way. This one's cool. Did you post this one already? I haven't even seen this one. I like this. Conscious, subconscious,
Oh,
unconscious. Wow, this is
pretty
great.
cool.
Don't follow your heart, it might only let you down. Follow only reason, emotions lead to treason. Only one thing will never let you down. To believe in yourself, believe in the reasons that you have laid out in the argument that will last forever.
I'm blown away how they're looking at each other,
Beautifully.
and one bigotry is larger than the other, but that is also creating a smile.
Holy cow. All right, well, welcome to this kind of thing here. What are we going to do with this? What are we calling this? Is this advanced chats? Is that what it is right now? What do you guys think? We need better names. Should we just call it the neck beard? This is like a philosophy chat, right? What would you call it?
Call it
I like the
understand yet.
The what?
The memes we don't understand yet.
The memes we don't understand yet. That's definitely what this is about. Well, okay. I'm Andreas Xirtus is they call me. And maybe you guys want to do a round of introducing yourselves a bit also. Might be worth doing.
Sure.
Yes. Should I go second?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds right.
One thing I'm concerned about is interruptions. I would hate to interrupt anyone, so I'll just, it's hard to get used to this type of format, so to speak, for me. But my name's Darren Nelson. I currently live in Springfield, Oregon, although I'm from Santa Cruz, California, and I plan on moving to Munich, Germany, as soon as things become more normalized. Yeah.
Epic. I'm also from Santa Cruz, so I find that, synchronistic.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, do I have to? I guess I'm going to be the one pushing people around. Okay, so Daniel, your name is below mine, so you're going to have to go next. Daniel, tell us about yourself and your country and whatnot.
Alrighty. Well, I come from a land far away in the land of Europe. And now I'm from Portugal. I was born in America, and I'm living a little bit all over the place right now. And I'm living and spending way too much time in your philosophy and meme group, Andreas, which is cool.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for that. I apologize. Sviatoslav, tell us your name and you say it this time, and tell us a little bit more about Latvia.
Alrighty, so I actually come from a Russian family. It's the common thing in Latvia to like we around 40 or 45% of population here speak Russian as their first language. Yeah, about myself, I'm 25. I have really enjoyed this meme group. It keeps me sane. I enjoy reading and sometimes commenting some shit. I feel like I can't keep up with you sometimes, all of you guys. But I really enjoy listening or reading or your opinions and stuff.
Darren,
I'm glad to be part of this.
Yes. Mute your microphone, bro.
Mute
Guy's telling us about how much he loves us, and you're just like doing the dishes.
I heard that. I hear all of this. I'm just moving my light.
We all hear you too.
There.
Mute.
Okay, good. Oh,
mute the like in a ancient Scythian cultures in Tartaria, they would do ritual meetups where they would have the chief pass a turtle shell, and then each one holding the turtle shell. That's the person who gets to make the noise, and the rest of the time they would mute their laptops by the fireside thousands of years ago.
I think I get the mute button now. Okay, there.
I love you. All right, Svatoslav, you were saying though that it keeps you sane. Why is that? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of crazy stuff here. So why does it help you? How does it help us?
Yeah, from one perspective, yeah, it is a bit crazy and without rules, but at the same time, you can find so many people that, like, mm, I don't know how to explain it in a few words. In this world where we have so many ultra liberal people, social justice warriors, people that really care about, or on the other side of the spectrum, conservatives, who really want to like control what others are thinking and saying and stuff. Uh, this anarchy and that we have in that group, and the depth of thought, uh, some really reasonable opinions you can hear there. Uh, while I don't necessarily agree with everything that is said, I really appreciate the time and energy that is put in the thought that people say there.
I love that. See, that's all I ever hoped for in my life. If I heard that, that's I can die now. I just want people to be able to hear different and experience different thoughts and make their own feelings about them. Well, Gary, tell us more, man. Tell us who you are. Like, what's your background?
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here, actually, to tell you the truth, because for the most part, I've just been living a practical life. And just since I joined your group, it's just your cover page was the main thing that really attracted me. And a lot of people are like, okay, physics, I gotta join it. But just to see just the energy that you have in this group, bro, it really inspired me. There's something that's compelled me in this group, that there's something in there. And there's some brilliant minds at work, and they have brilliant ideas and philosophies to share, so to embrace, let alone. So I'm here for the ride, bro. Like I'm just taking it like one step at a time. I'm not anybody eccentric. Like I'm just here, and I'm glad to be a part of this show, and just to basically experience everybody, seeing everybody experience their life intricately, uniquely in their own ways. Just pretty much turned into like a whole show for me, and a virtual way, and where it's like we're feeling each other's vibes and seeing the progress that we're making, and we're feeling compassion towards each other. That compassion is really what's fulfilling in my nature, and I'm just embracing that within everyone and accordingly. But I'm just happy to be here. That's all.
You're also an epic memer. I think that's the thing that and memes, when people talk about it, make it sound like it's not that big of a deal because it's just memes or, like pictures or like whatever. But no, like it's just like the idea of genetics. You have genetic manipulation. You also have mimetic manipulation. And so when I've been inspired by thoughts you've put out there, and I know a lot of other people have, and it's interesting to see that crisscrossing of heterodoxy, I guess is the word we've kind of found to describe like two opposites that have kind of find a new middle. It's the opposite of centricism in a way, because centricism is where you start to lose itself, but the other is heterodoxy, where you go so extreme that you come back around like Pac-Man. And so I like that. I like that that you've been there.
It's funny to mention that, because that's what been the dilemma of thoughts, according with my close colleagues, is like people get lost, like they don't set up a trail back home, like back to where their the roots are, like, so that they don't lose themselves. It's great to go adventure out and explore in whatever ways, but we have to be aware of what's out there that can like entice us and suck us in, and then there's no escape, or make us lose our way back home. And I find that's been something on the back of my mind. I've been trying to like really keep myself grounded, so I don't get myself too lost out of place. So good thing you mentioned that.
Let me
Well,
add something. Let me jump in there.
yeah,
Because
Daniel.
if I may very quickly. One of the things that comes to mind with this group is it feels like a little bit like a microcosm where a lot of okay, as opposed to normal meme groups where it's all like it's either left wing or right wing, this group is like a little bit of not only a melting pot but an acceleration melting pot where there's a lot of let me put this meme out there without really believing it, see what it does, and then someone else does the other way around, and all of a sudden we're playing at enough of a level like we can say shit that we do not need to believe. And what does that do? That kind of diffuses the belief, like, oh shit, I believe this cause and I believe this cause. All of a sudden we're playing meta and we're navigating above it. And I think that's like the nicest thing about the memes that we don't even understand yet.
Right.
That's like, you throw the ball to the front and just chase it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you've also been introducing a lot of so we've gone through phases of political memes, and people thought it was a political group because there was an election season. And I noticed that I feel like we've gone really not political right now as hard, because a lot of the things that we kind of are aiming at have become more about like Lacanian language and how symbols are extended and, individuals and society. And I think that's really the thing. It's like, how do we wrestle with these ideas in a simulator? Well, the best simulator is the human mind and the human body, because the emotions and the thoughts that you produce from these images are you're simulating in your mind what would happen if I believed or felt or that was true. I think that's probably what it's about, to not understand something. But it's also scary because there's like this idea of magic, and magic tends to be like marketing, where you believe something, a product exists, that it works, and you buy it and it doesn't work yet, but that you can make a product work because people believe in it. It's the Elon Musk meme magic. So we have to also be careful sometimes, because we could make people believe things if we're not careful. We have to all be on that level where we're thinking thoughts in an open playing field, where we're not just like, because a lot of people, you tell them something and they'll believe it, like that's it.
Yeah, especially if you say it in an exciting way, in a nice way. It's like shit posting, or it's like 4chan, but it's 2021. It's in Facebook with a specifically different flavor.
Yeah, 4chan's a good idea, because like they have everyone thinking different thoughts all the time, but you have people that are literally doing, as you say, shit posts, which are, you have to wonder if some of those things are definitely not real. They just literally are messing with you. But this is more to an extent you're aware that you're seeing extremes. It'd be like if you were running through the world and seeing all the propaganda all at once, because they're so clash, with each other. One's saying the exact opposite of the other right next to each other. So it's like, how can you believe both? But if you have to, like, what do you do with that?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's like magic, how magic works too, and everything really. Just polar opposites that creep up on us.
Don't let Gucci inside.
I heard some of that. Well, Vince also, really quickly, we didn't get to Vince yet because he doesn't have a camera. So it's still worth getting your story. Tell us more, Vince. For you.
Hey, I'm an artist out of Quebec. I have a passion for mythology and making, I guess, currently working on a comic book that sort of integrates all these ideas that we've been talking about, and probably will actually include an homage to advanced philosophy memes, because I mean it's been part of like the journey in a way. It's like finding the others that Timothy Leary talks about, like you find people that are willing to discuss ideas even if they don't agree with each other. And I feel like APM is sort of the anti-tribe, or like the meta tribe, where you're able to actually see the humanness behind whatever ideology the person has, like, backing them. Because a lot of people have that problem where they're just mouthpieces for their ideology, and then in advanced philosophy memes we get to, like, I don't know, sort of find the human side that gets so neglected in most discussions and most debates, so it's nice to not everyone is always triggered all the time, appreciate it.
That, and I think we all share, like, even though there's all kinds of differences in us, I think we all together, like, I think we all can agree, like, Quebecy girls are hot. The Quebecois chicks. Anyway,
You guys
But-
should see my girlfriend. Holy shit.
nice
A
plug.
girlfriend? Shit.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know how I
Awesome.
managed it, but I managed to get a girlfriend who's amazing. It was
Epic.
destiny, really. Yeah.
Quite the reputation, indeed.
Managed it by being a wonderful man.
Wise.
It's a seven-way podcast, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. We got this to work. I'm stoked, actually. I was wondering how many people we could get this to work on. Well, Darren also, though, this was originally kind of planned because Darren had all these thoughts. So I kind of want to let you have some of the floor for what you want. Do you have some questions, or you had some places you wanted to go?
Just listening to everyone's statements is really humbling, and it's neat to be a part of a community too, where we invest ourselves in learning. And what does it take to explore and learn and move from somewhere where you're comfortable? Often what makes us uncomfortable has the most educational value, so to speak. But I found this book about 5 years ago. Actually, I bought it at Logos in Santa Cruz. You know what I'm talking about. Called Virus of the Mind. And it's, I love its definitions and how it's organized, because it has these boxes with little memes that it wants you, that communicates what memes are well. And so the first box is just the simple definition of a meme. A meme is a unit of information in a mind whose existence influences events such that more copies of itself get created in other minds. The next box is, if I talk about a good meme or a successful meme, I'm talking about an idea or belief that spreads easily throughout the population, not necessarily what we think of as a good idea. So assigning value to things is, information builds, and memes are building blocks for how we perceive ourselves and everything around us. So they're extremely influential, and they can be used to communicate a particular message in a very covert way. And it's interesting to think that all information and all language that we use to communicate is mimetic in some way. And whether we're replicating it or not, just by sharing gossip, we influence others. And so I think it's really important to see how memes are a deep part of who we are as human beings.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was just thinking about Primus too. I was like, yeah, right by Logos. I went to that Primus show. I feel like you probably were there at the same time or something, man. I don't know, you like Primus.
I do like Primus, and I wore the shirt because it's kind of interesting. It's about the Saturated Seven, which is this book from the 70s. Whoa. About these gnomes and trolls who steal rainbows. But if you look closely at the image, I don't know how well you can see it, it's the Last Supper.
I need to get this book now. Oh my gosh.
And so Primus released an album not long ago where they write songs around the theme of the Desaturated Seven, and stealing rainbows or providing rainbows. How do we do that for one another? A lot of the ways that how do we inspire our imaginations to be creative? What is creation? Who are we as creators? And I think that a lot of our greatest wisdom as human beings is in a way to instruct us how to be creators ourselves. And that's why I love advanced philosophy memes too, because it lets us kind of take the reins and share and work with ideas like clay, and I've appreciated what people have said where it's not a judgmental atmosphere, and instead we can kind of bounce ideas off each other and pick what we think makes sense or not. And I love the freedom of that.
I've noticed too, when people are sharing memes, it's like it starts out kind of the same as an NPC, and then it becomes, well, I'm picking who I'm sharing from now all of a sudden, and which I'm not. And then there's this point where they start to make their own memes, and that's the crazy like flux point, because it's just great, like the half-baked moment. Like I love seeing someone just beginning on the meme path, because I know what they're, especially if I've seen some of the things that they've been posting before, I know what they're thinking about a bit, and you're like, oh, I know what you're trying to say. But then you get this reaction from all these people because it's a grammar, so it's confusing if you say, it's like if you spoke like Yoda, because you're putting the lack of pretext confuses the audience. But I have felt that, anyone who's made an APM meme, and like I've just seen it where someone's put the word APM onto the meme, like it seems like there's like a doorway that opens and there's a click that happens, and all of a sudden it's like boom, like they get it. I don't know, maybe just because I feel like they get it because I'm into it, but there's a lot of resonance that happens because of the shared information and the feelings. I think when you can imagine, like, this is like COVID time, we're not in the same room with each other, we can't share, like, a lot of what humanity is feelings and smells and sensations of hormones, and like the fact that you're in a room with vibrating electromagnetic currents running through you, like the matrix batteries, like they're all powering together. That's all taken away from us. And so this is this other thing where you're left to like your own feelings, and there's a lot of internalization. And yet it seems like we're exploring more, we're feeling more, we're more safe to feel, and we're sharing those feelings. And it's like, do you feel that? I mean, it's crazy to be able to share feelings over the internet. I don't know. That's what's, I don't know if people meant that when they thought that they were going to meme, that we would be able to become like somewhat telepathic through it. But the main thing I was thinking though is when you start to make your own memes, you set yourself free.
Well, I think that there's an aspect of creation in there that is like a internet. In all the memes that we have is a mythological setup. It's the same thing as past mythology or modern with like DC and Marvel, but it's like personally created within the internet. And I have this idea running around in my head of mimetic entities that spread mimetically, that they only exist as thought forms, but they're essentially memeplexes of complex combination of ideas and philosophies that that become an ideal you can embody, or the opposite, a mimetic demon. Think like Karen, for example. The meme of Karen is extremely powerful because it demonstrates like the worst, like the anti-ideal of I guess the mother, like this sort of this memeplex can be, I guess, deciphered to understand our civilization, really. It's like this is like the collective mind, the internet generating its own mythos, and people relate to it and then also embody it, because there's like the past forms the future. So we create memes, kids look at them, and then they go, oh, that's an aspect of existence I can embody, and as someone who's trying to create a story, like the idea of memes becomes sort of weird, because like I'm creating a two-dimensional window into another world, essentially, and this world is a reflection of my own psyche, but I'm trying to make a reflection of my relationship to the internet and to my reality through my own hyper reality, like Silent Hill or Alice in Wonderland kind of thing. It's a hard world, but we live in a society, as they say.
So I've got some kind of thoughts also about the world and where we're at with like this political, ideology. I mean, Svatoslav, you were saying earlier, the kind of that we could live in a world that has so much more like neoliberalism, as Slavoj Zizek kind of harps on, has got its own set of issues, and ultra right conservatism is certainly not a safe place for free thought. I mean, like I love the band Pussy Riot, and I feel really bad that Tattoo had to break up and say they were, like they regret what they did. Like what kind of world are we living in where the band Tattoo has to regret writing Nas Nene Gonyat? I mean, it's a fun time. I don't know. So I feel bad for the world when we have despotism on either side of the case. What do we do about that? Like what is happening to our society, and like do like, and before we like change it, and I'm not just saying what do we do about that, like how do we stop it, like let's hear it out. Like what is cancel culture asking of us, and what are its reasons? Like what are the reasons why we should, listen to them, before we get into also what are some of the problems and consequences, like why is there some benefit, and what are the light sides of it?
Cancel culture is basically filtering of the mainstream, but like once it comes to like what it does, it just generates subcultures. That's it. You're just gonna push it underground, and no matter what, even if you try to cancel people for their opinions don't go away. They just talk about them in mediums that aren't mainstream, and that's pretty much it. So the answer, I think, is just keep creating good memes. Like you can't fight bad memes with bad memes. You can't let them cancel your capacity to create memes. It's yours, so create, and there's always a way to spread, whether old or new. Like they're just trying to control the new, so fuck it, write a book. There's a lot of things that you can actually do, and you're gonna find an audience for it. So
I've asked myself in the past what it means to advance. What does it mean to move forward? A large aspect to that, I think, is reflection. That's been mentioned, but self-reflection is so important too. And when someone had mentioned, I believe Vince, his interest in mythology, I've been thinking a lot about the creation myth of Christianity in Genesis, and how God had 7 days to finish the project. With each day was a period to self-reflect and ask, what is this? And when it was decided by observation, it was good, it proceeded until a conclusion. I wondered myself how human beings, with whatever they create, follow a similar structure where we do one step and then we look at that step before we move to the next step. And moving with steps is like crawling. And memes influence us because they're relevant to us. And that's why I appreciate APM as well, because and our attitudes regarding what we see and interact with our feelings is that we can self-reflect in a safe way. And we don't know where we're going necessarily, with what it will inspire us to think about, with how it will touch us deeply because of our past, how it will motivate us for the future. And moving forward seems to me to be a process that is building upon itself. And so I really think it's very holistic and honest. Finding that heterodoxical, I need to look into that word because I found that to be heterodoxical. That's a fantastic concept. So yeah, I thought that was cool. Creation.
Well,
that word might get canceled though, be careful.
It's true. You could call it sysodox or something like that. I don't know.
But like, at least to address it at all.
That's true. I mean, that's how it goes. But inclusivity, I think, is another word that you can use their words until they cancel themselves, and then you start to see iconoclasm for just removing the baby with the bathwater so often that you run out of words and you're stuck with that Orwellian concept of new speak, where there's double plus good because you can't say bad. And I mean, there's problems with that. So we're going to notice that when people can't express themselves, that they end up repeating the first blunders that humans have made for tens of thousands of generations continually. Because if you don't have the lesson that was learned the hard way, then you're going to end up not learning the easy way. You're going to repeat learning the lesson because the lesson will be taught to you. I mean, that's society. That's also nature, at its core. If you sink or swim. Well, I wanted to pull up memes. Do you think, Vince, do you want to try to pull open, or should I try it? Because I have some internet problem. I just tried it and it glitched my computer. Do you want to pull up APM? Can you do a screen share with that green button at the bottom of the screen?
Yeah, give me a second.
Thanks, buddy.
I'd like to add something based on what we're suggesting. Is it sometimes good to cancel something? What is the benefit or the cost? What are we gaining or losing by making this decision for what to accept or reject? Much of it, and much of, I think, where we find wisdom best is in its paradox, in its opposites. Sink or swim, when you said that. Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance, I was reminded of, where if we are tolerant of intolerance, eventually intolerance will become intolerant of the original tolerance. So in order to facilitate creation, do sometimes things need to be destroyed? We certainly know that through entropy.
Just a second. Your share screen is turned off, Andreas. You turned it off, apparently. Good turn. Yeah, just in relation to what you were talking about, I don't know if you're familiar with Grant Morrison or comic books, but like he talks about this thing called the anti-life equation. And the anti-life equation is sort of, it's a pattern of being, it's like an algorithm that generates, you know, anti-life. So it's like something that spreads mimetically and eventually contaminates all of humanity, you know. And then there's the life equation that is sort of the counter to it, and it's spreading good memes and good love and, you know, hope and truth and all that. But yeah, it's a
So a natural selection is about the success rate of your ability to replicate yourself. I like another one of these boxes from this book. It says, once created, a virus of the mind gains a life independent of its creator and evolves quickly to infect as many people as possible. Is there danger in information? And in this information age, we are bombarded with information from every angle, whether it be sincere or insincere. And I sometimes am concerned about insincere motives with information. When is disinformation used in order to weaponize information and purposefully keep people suppressed, oppressed, mentally disabled? By that, I mean unable to use their mind. And so it's very powerful of a force. And when we respect information, I hope to increase our ability to navigate information. And like any sea in a journey, there are waves that could capsize us. But if we sail well and we understand the operations of the boat, then we can keep ourselves above water, because it is possible to drown in information. So I'll leave it at that.
well, you know, you got to learn to navigate, and that means being able to
Yeah.
create simulations in your mind and just, you know, reflecting on every possibility as much as possible. It's like a fractal thought structure, right, of just endless possibilities that you have to, like, which timeline do you want to go down, basically? You know, that's what you got to figure out. And so you got to pick your path carefully, and that comes with wisdom, really. It comes with time, because even no matter how much, you know, like, we could figure everything out, but you got to teach people everything once you figure it out. And kids have to have their own development before they're able to actually reach a certain level of understanding everything. You know, we could talk as like 25 to 40-year-olds as like, oh, well, we understand reality enough to, like, you know, have something functional that we can do more. And if everyone just agreed with it, you know, but once you actually try to teach it to anyone, then it becomes a sort of, you know, a force in of itself that you have to figure out. And so, you know, there's like the seasons of humanity that we have to respect in that development. And people want collective enlightenment tomorrow, you know, but like, who knows how much longer it'll be before we get there, and you have to let that process unfold. And that's like a refining process, you know. Like, of course there are some memes that are dangerous and that spread and they're problematic, and I hate that word, though, that are like, you know, that can actually have an adverse effect on your philosophical infrastructure. Like, what drives you as a person can be altered by consuming bad things, because it's constantly putting new philosophy inside of you, you know. Like, I remember growing up, I listened to a lot of metal, and like, I don't hate metal by any means, but the idea was that, like, metal became a sort of thing that I just consumed for the sake of consuming. There wasn't actually anything behind it. It was just, let's just enjoy the music, and like it was about the energy of the music as opposed to the message. But like once I started actually reflecting upon it and like reflecting about what I consumed and what it was doing to my mind, like you realize that like holy shit, like there's a lot of let's say dark memes or dark magic out there, whatever you want to call it, that has a sort of, you know, a neurological effect on you. If you spend your time listening to nihilism, or if you're growing up at like 12, 13 listening to hyper nihilism, then eventually, like, of course you might end up cutting yourself or committing suicide. You're bombarding your mind with memes, your subconscious at that, because you're not even consciously consuming it. It's all going into your subconscious, and like who knows what actually do in the long run, you know. So but that process, like I said, it's a refinement process. You know, you have to give room to the shadow. So like there's a difference between the shadow and like bad, right? It's not the same thing. And so metal in of itself isn't a bad thing, but it is very much so like the shadow of our culture. You know, it's like the dark genre. It's like an entire dark thing on its own. And that's where we talk about the things that are the hardest to talk about, you know, like our anger, for example. But you got to be careful what you create, because if you spend your time, like the worst thing I think is when you try to make art about like ancient demons that you don't understand, and you're just like, you know, singing songs about like sacrificing humans, and whoever's listening to this is going to get sacrificed. Like that's the sort of stuff that ends off being like you just don't know what you're doing, and you're just doing whatever, and then nothing matters, so it doesn't matter, but then you end off infecting people with who knows what kind of mimetic entity or something. That's all.
I've noticed that so much. I mean, it makes me scared to read the book at all that I was thinking about earlier, because it was when Darren was talking, one of the things that Darren and I talked a lot about over the course of the year or two almost that this group has started to form. I don't even know, but it's been a minute. But Darren and I have noticed how meme magic has been used in the political psychology of the United States and around the world. It's American politics tend to be the focus point for a number of different people. So they're basing and pivoting their ideas on that. And, you know, this last period arguably is one of the most impressive psychological operations ever, right? With the with QAnon, regardless of everyone's feelings of what parts of that were real, there were certainly parts of it which were orchestrated by the government through propaganda purposes. And we know this from, people who've been arrested or been cited who were actually California and Santa Cruz psychological operations officers, So the book that I've been thinking a lot about was like Wilhelm Reich's Mass Psychology of Fascism, because it's a book that really gets into both the sexuality of psychology and of political ideology, because sexualization is how they control so many people with pornography and everything else. It's actually part of what, Freud said that might not be completely wrong, but what they've done is they've made people feel, like alone and vulnerable in this point when they're not able to meet each other. And the only way they can communicate really in this period is on the internet. So we've been separated. And if you look at where we're coming from out of this period of where, the last president was, looked at like the oppositional, like person to the entire world, and that the world was either good or evil, like either it was pedophiles that were running everything or it was not. Well, I mean, I guess the point is I wanted to pull out like some of the earlier chapter about how you agitate someone, and you've more context being that there's a number of books and they talk about how you have to provoke a response. A lot of ideas with meme magic, like we were saying earlier, is you do something and it makes someone provoke a reaction, and it could be a good reaction, a laugh. But once you've trained yourself to pick up on people's laughs, cries, and everything else, like with media, then you can actually get people to vote certain ways or act certain ways, and not necessarily in ways that seem totally straightforward. They could be total pool shots where you get somebody to bounce off of an angle, and then all of a sudden they have to take their kids to see this terrible movie that's pornographic, because otherwise they're promoting censorship. And then when they were a kid, like this is really easy to manipulate people in ways if you just think about the 4 shots it takes to get them to do something. But so rationally, this is from page 10 because I don't want to get too deep into Reich, but you got to read Reich. Rationally considered, one would expect economically wretched masses of the workers to develop a keen consciousness of their own social situation. One would further expect this consciousness to harden into a determination to rid themselves of their social misery. In short, one would expect that the social wretched working man to revolt against the abuses to which they are subjected to. After all, they perform this responsible social work, and it is upon them and like them that the wheel of the ill of society rests. But in general, they're too busy. And because they're too busy to work on that, it keeps the workers in a consciousness of this, keeping with a social situation, which is called by the Marxists the class consciousness. And we want to call it class consciousness of one's skills, but really it's of one's social responsibility. So I think that that's kind of where we're at with this whole, like, where you fit in society right now is where you think you can act, even though it's the most plastic it's ever been in history, because everyone can be pretty much anybody at this point, and we have the ability to meme ourselves into work. Like, you could put memes in your resume now. This is a new world. But what we end up doing is we provoke people into believing that they have to be scared and that they have to respond in certain ways to the fear. And so fear leads to this mass psychology of fascism on both sides, right? Because you have people, like we were saying, that believe the only answer is to destroy the system. The other people that believe the only answer is to enforce the system. But because of that, they're actually creating this really rigid paradox that entraps them into the worst state of fear and of control. And that's my pitch.
Well, you just need an authority to tell people what good is, and then if they don't act within what they're told good is, then they're the bad guys. It's that simple, and people who position themselves as an authority on good or being anti-bad, if you disagree with them, then they automatically think you're bad because they're on the side of good. And so it's that black and white for every single person. Well, not every single, but a lot of people. And I think that's the major problem. You just never have an actual honest conversation anymore. All that you're trying to do is find ammunition to use against the other person because you think you're right and they're the enemy. They're wrong, But hey, at least APM can hold the guns for a bit. So,
I think looking at memes together would be interesting. I did want to offer something that education informs, propaganda provokes. When you talked about provoking agitation, getting a human being to get to their emotional core and their agitation takes us to our brainstem and can deprive us of our ability to critically think. And having us disengage with our own tools for navigation of the information is part of a very nefarious goal. When I've heard dark magic thrown around, I've heard dark something else, but dark science I haven't heard. And there are positive aspects of our psychology and negative aspects of our psychology. And provoking us to engage with those different aspects is how we can be greatly manipulated. Whether something makes us better or improves our mental state where we can critically think of ourselves, or makes us narcissistic, makes us self-serving, makes us selfish. And how truth can be forged, or half truths can be used to get people to believe something, like you've said. Before we get to memes, there is meaning to every meme. What does it mean? What does it mean? And human beings need meaning. And so whether we're seeking it or we're finding it within ourselves, it's always this pursuit of truth. And that is where we're very vulnerable, because what is true can be contrived. Yeah, anyway.
Epic. Well, Vince was right also. Apparently they blessed this account. So now you all can screen share simultaneously if you were to so want. So Vince, if you want to try to turn that on, let me know if that works for you now. And in the meantime, you guys also, Gary, what's going on with you? Look at you, guy.
Oh, I'm loving this moment right now. It's just I'm learning so much from you guys, and I'm seeing there are so many different experiencing different perspectives and getting up to date.
Whoa, I like this meme a lot, by the way. This one's cool. Did you post this one already? I haven't even seen this one. I like this. Conscious, subconscious, unconscious Wow, this is
Pretty
great.
cool.
Projection of bigotry. Bigotry is a projection of bigotry. I mean, this is probably one of the best I've seen in a while. I really like this one.
Yeah, this one's good, really. You should post it.
Yeah.
We can't hear you, man.
Vince, you got any words on this, or should we just all stand around and like modern art? I guess.
I'm blown away how they're looking at each other
Beautifully.
And one bigotry is larger than the other, but that is also creating a smile. And so who is seeing who? Are they seeing themselves consciously or unconsciously, both at the same time? It seems simultaneous.
Yeah, I mean, like that person might not be able to see past the blinding bigotry, though. They might just be a nice blind person. You know, it's kind of like Elmo recently, like was in a circumstance where he found out that there were Black people of color, or however they said it, on Sesame Street. Because up to that point, there'd obviously been lots of, you know, people of different varying ethnicities, and every Muppet's a different bright neon color. So it seemed like it was pretty obvious that Sesame Street was, you know, inclusive and diversive, but they had never really addressed the issue of someone self-identifying as having been part of some smaller group than the whole, right? And Buber talks about unanimity minus one. And so it actually matters to some people to be recognized for what their ascribed identity is. And Sviatoslav says he's from Latvia, but he's Russian. You know, it's like it matters to people, right? Like I'm not Serbian because I'm Croatian. Any true Scotsman, all of these. Ooh, this is good. This is my future. This is what I think about all the time when your Neuralink chip gets hacked. Never gonna give you up. I mean, this could be real, right? If we don't open source the tech,
Rickrolled.
guys, yeah, you're gonna get rickrolled, and you're gonna have like every 15 minutes or every half hour, your Microsoft update's gonna rickroll you if you don't pay. That's what's gonna happen.
The last one with the bigotry, it's unintended consequences. The first projection is onto the person, and it sounds as though that person is angry, saying you're a bigot, but it's making that other person more of a bigot by doing so. It's so when we call people racist, do we turn them into racists? There's a good song, actually, Les Claypool. It's called Ding Dang. And I will have to say a word that I don't normally say, but it's important to the message, is they used to call him boy when he was but a tiger, so he grew up to be an angry young man. They said, run now at football games in high school. He grew up to be an angry young man. If they would have called him a brother or a neighbor or a cousin, then the world would be less one angry young man. But they called him the little boy who, when he was but a tiger, so he grew up to be an angry young man. That is kind of what I saw in the bigotry meme.
It's true.
Yeah, well, you know, there's an aspect of like, if you treat people like a monster, eventually they'll show you what to them is their real monstrous side. So like, you know, if you go around calling people monsters, they're like, dude, like this is not me. Am I unhinged? This is like my opinion. You're mistaken. You're mistaken my most violent potential for a basic like difference in opinion, you know, like, and so it's like people only think in extremes. You're either a monster or you're a good guy, you know, like there's no real nuance anymore.
Absolutely. It's a defense mechanism too, to do that.
There's also this idea of ascribed identity. So you think about how we've created this word, you know, in a lot of ways it comes from so much convoluted history, but as time goes on, it's being reclaimed by rap music and rap culture. And there's been a lot of people, African Americans, have been really upset about the use of it sometimes. Like conservative African Americans often don't like the use of the N-word in rap music. The N-word in question, or something we could say. I don't know. I'm trying to keep the YouTube censors from being upset. But
sorry if I
yeah, I mean, you're probably gonna get taken away in a van, but no, it's okay. Like
you're gonna need to bleep it at least. You know?
He was like, and I quote, you know, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, we try not to curse as much as possible because, you know, the more, basically it's more inclusive because there are people that are vegetarians and don't curse or drink, and the less you do those things in your thing, the more inclusive you are, right, for everyone in a generalized sense. We can talk about these things, so yeah.
So is it good to cancel things that hurt people when we are aware of such things, or should it be reappropriated? Because that word is originally hurtful, but if it can be adopted, like calling the Michiganders Wolverines, because that was originally an insult from Ohio. But then they said, no, we are the dirty Wolverines. And it becomes this moniker that takes pride. It makes me think of deplorables. Saying that becomes an identity. And it's unintended how you can create your identity around a concept, an abstract concept like that.
My main concern is the confluence of self-driven motivations and the top-down. I mean, the bottom-up is awesome, but the top-down media control is the biggest problem in the world. You look at there are not a lot of people of color writing their own stories for sitcoms. You know, often they're playing characters on a sitcom written by, you know, someone else. And it's the same with everyone down the way. You know, the Italian stereotypes in the 50s really degenerated the image of the American Italian, because they said this person is a you know, part of the mafia, and all of them are part of the mafia, and they're super aggressive and all of these dramatic things, right? But you look at the African Americans, it's the same story. They've created this culture in television and rap music that is often not, it's synthesized, and it's another kind of appropriation, but it's a much more sinister kind of appropriation, because you're controlling the culture of another group. You've segregated socioeconomically this group and said, you're going to be forced to watch these shows and want to ascribe yourself to these characters. And what are the characters like? Well, they live in the projects, or they're rappers, or they're lazy, or, you know, and this could be also this true again for any group along the way. Now they're doing this a lot with Asian Americans on television, where they're like, oh, they're lazy because everyone thinks they're smart, so they're tricky. It's like the Doctor Show. It's like they do this so often, where they take over the meme magic from the top down. Christian music in the late 90s, this happened. Every day I wake up, I'm still trapped in samsara. This is my life. You've got the danks, bro. This is good. But yeah, there's
well, just to interject, I remember hearing Tupac, like in an interview years ago. He was on MTV and he was talking about, like, they were interviewing him like, oh yeah, you're like really into, like, you know, gangster stuff, and like you like being violent and blah blah blah. And the entire time he's just like, yeah, sure, totally, man, whatever you say, this is totally really me, totally. And he was, you know, basically breaking the veil at that moment, where he was saying like this is just a persona. And it feels like he and people in his community saw something coming culturally, that there would be a takeover of gangster rap and anti-authoritarian sort of, you know, subgenres of music, and the commercialization of it. I mean, he was talking to MTV after all, so he knew. So you have to create a sort, when you become an artist who talks on the world stage like him, well, he had to create a sort of persona to say generate an archetype within the limits of the box created by culture, to actually aspire to be and be better. You know, like he was talking about working together and, like, you know, putting down the guns and trying to heal and all that stuff, at a time where everyone was talking about just, you know, violence and anti-cop and all that, you know. And so it's sort of a, you know, like you said, when you call people monsters, they turn into monsters, and that's what the gangster sort of becomes. He's like, okay, well, you know, the world is too hard, so therefore here's my monstrous side, here's my potential for harm made manifest. And they create a persona that they then carry out in the world, like, this is me, the gun-toting whatever. Like, no, what they really are wounded children, basically, who grew up to develop defenses and stuff, like everyone really. But
can we use it the other way around? Can we make people more can we make people stronger with that same magic? I mean, isn't that kind of the idea of advancement or whatever?
That's controlled trauma, right? And what that points to is initiation. It's something that's long forgone now, but initiation is the transferring point between boyhood and manhood, where you have a symbolic event or moment that allows you to understand that the world is not a game that you can just, you know, run away from. And we never get that. We simulate that with video games. Actually, that's sort of the surrogate role that video games play, where it's the same thing except without consequences. So it's like, oh, you're gonna go kill the wolf or something. Well, now you can try 10,000 times. It doesn't matter, you know. And so there's no actual sort of incentive to control your trauma. Instead, it's just defenses all the time. So I think there is a way to do it, and that comes with the proper relationship between the child and the adult, because the child is going to be swept up into the cultural, I mean, I don't want to say brainwashing, whatever it is, you know, while the adult might be aware that everything is bullshit. The kid goes, no, this actually truly matters. Buy me the toy. All my friends have the toy. This is really important. And you have to go like, this is bullshit. I have to wait until you're developed enough to understand that this is bullshit. And so there's an entire process there that needs to unfold, you know?
Yeah. Great points. It brings to me the question of authenticity. Do we desire authenticity? The opposite of authenticity would be something synthetic, but anything synthetic is synthesized from something else. So
I think synthetic can still be authentic. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's more like something that's how do you describe something that's a lie? You know, so you have authenticity versus something that's
we used to talk about it as soul, right? Like something has soul. If it has the soul, then people feel it, and they're like, this is an authentic piece of art. You know, like it has the spirit in it.
What is real and what is fantasy, what is true and false, are often so close together depending on how we perceive it. I was asking myself if Frankenstein is the monster because of how the villagers see him, or is he the monster because of something more? Is he authentically a monster? He is to how the minds receive the stimuli of him because of his features, how grotesque he may look. But what makes things authentically what they are, especially if they're being created? Kind of an interesting thing.
Right. You think in 2021, Frankenstein's monster wouldn't be a monster. The whole story would be completely different. I mean, he could still do all the same things. He could still kill the little girl, and there could still be people that were upset at him with pitchforks. But we would then find the people with pitchforks to be the monsters in this version because they're trying to kill this guy. Man, somebody write that down.
You know,
Yeah.
I want to add to this. Some of our perceptions come from it's like it's genetical thing. It's from evolution. So it's like with the holes that look like wasp net. What is it called? Well, where wasps lives. You know. Hives. Yeah. We tend to be afraid of you know, strange looking holes or slimy things, for example, or bees, like they have stripes, or some other venomous animals have like vivid colors. You know, it's an evolutionary thing.
So yeah, it's funny because you have colored hair, and and like, you know, like the idea, people having hyper bright colored hair, like you see it a lot in punk culture and goth culture and all these. And I mean, look, I was deep in that culture for a long time.
Samesies.
I've dated my
samesies. Me too.
Dated my fair share of goth chicks, you know. But there's an aspect of it that is wearing your damage on your sleeve. Like, you know, like there's something about the vibrant colors that are like an alarm for their mood, basically, because they make a psychological choice when they choose which color to alter their hair color with, and that can actually be reflective of that period of their life. So like, I'm not saying that it's a science, like not everyone with red hair is aggressive, you know, but like there's actually a reflection of your sort of psychological state based on the way that you express yourself. And I don't know what it says to have platinum white hair. I don't think anything negative, but you know,
it seems very instinctual with a threat identification system that we have. It's innate. We identify things that could cause us threats, but then in which case that identification could be hijacked pretty soon. I never thought someone with red hair was aggressive, but how can I be conditioned or trained to believe that people with red hair are in fact aggressive?
Well, it could be that it actually, I mean, it's multi-state. Like You know,
Yeah.
red hair alone doesn't necessarily instigate
Yeah.
the
I
need
mean,
to be violent. We're not all Red Bulls, right? But it could trigger our minds to think like, oh, she looks like a red apple, and apples are good fruits, and like I want to fuck that. You know,
there's
so it's
something
like,
to the rods and cornea. So like I do video projection art a lot. So Santa Cruz, all of the videos for like all of the bands every night. I figured that was the way to do a show so that you did, you know, they get a DJ gets an hour. You know, you could do 10-hour sets for videos for if you do every DJ's video. And each one of them has their own kind of sound. And we would, yeah, so Blue, I was called Smurf Zeppelin as a child because I dyed my hair blue and it got over my hands and face. And so a lot of kids in Santa Cruz still call me Smurf, you know, to this day. But what ended up happening was I think I was more popularized by being the blue kid, Smurf. So by junior high, 7th or 8th or ninth almost grade, I think it was like 8th, 9th grade, I dyed my hair red and it became pink. And it was like pimping. First it was red for Papa Smurf. And so that means to me, I think that that's an assertiveness that I did. That, and I hadn't thought about it like that. And maybe it's part of just the symbology of the Strumps and Smurfs is that they have this red hatted, like Marxist bearded leader over these blue people. I don't know if you heard that, but yeah.
I actually have some stuff about the Smurfs to talk about, ironically. But I done some research on the mythos of Smurfs, and they're basically mushroom people, right? They're people
Right.
who live inside of mushrooms, so they're
And they have
functionally
copper blood. That's why
functionally like, let's say there's an entity you can communicate with when you eat mushrooms. That's what they're meant to represent. And Gargamel, his obsession with them is for that reason. He's a druid who's trying to make a philosopher's stone out of the blood of Smurfs. And I mean, like, there's someone made a story like this for kids, you know? Like,
absolutely. Well, but Iceland, and you've got the Hilda folk. I mean, or is he from Belgium? Peo is from Belgium, right? I forget.
oh yeah.
But yeah, so
The less you know, the better you sleep sometimes.
it's true. I mean, what they're, I remember telling this to these 5 and 7-year-olds recently. I was like, that like Smurfette's not a Smurf. She was programmed in a lab, basically. She was created by Gargamel to infiltrate the Smurfs, and then eventually her hair was turned white when she lost her lack of purity. When she became fully indoctrinated into the Smurf cult, like she lost her interest in overwhelming them and feeding them to her master and tricking them. Then she got rid of her darkness, and maybe that's what it reflects outwards. But for me, looking at white hair, what it was after I was done with my bright colors, I was like, well, the cool, I used to wear black for a while because I was told I wasn't allowed to wear certain kind of skateboarder clothes. So I became goth just I wore like really like black button up shirt and black pants and black leather shoes. And it was more like 80s, like Jesuit than it was goth, but it was industrial. And like, then I had bright colored hair because there was no rules against that yet, just chains. But I went with bleach because I was like, I want to get past all that and I want to have all of it gone. And so I thought I would remove all of the things I'd added to myself, but also all the things that I was originally, and start with a blank slate.
Yeah.
May I say two things? Just quickly, the hive instinct is how we identify with one another. And it's interesting hearing your story, Andreas, about having blue hair. Also, sometimes it's paradoxical how standing out is our way of fitting in. And that how we relate to others and how we identify, it shapes who we see ourselves to be, is who we identify with. And I just thought that was a really interesting thing.
I love that. The way we fit in is that we stand out so much that we don't fit in with anything, so that we're just the thing that things orbit around, the anchor.
It's about becoming the trendsetter. So like, once you're the one who can actually lead the charge of uniqueness or authenticity or perceived authenticity, basically, you're able to say disarm people from being defensive of you, because otherwise you're like a half-shaped thing. You don't even have a persona. People are just like, well, this is someone who hasn't even articulated, like they didn't even create a mythological representation of themselves to embody. What a bunch of losers. Like, that's basically how it goes.
This pursuit of being yourself or pursuit of being like others, we all go through this in middle school, and I think that's part of the evolution of how a human being becomes an individual, is asking themselves, how do I fit in? We go back and forth. With the pandemic, we've all been removed from interacting with each other as easily as it once was, and it challenged our humanity. And it makes me think that when there are dark periods, or human beings don't like being held in chains or shackles, and when those chains are removed, we often are quite creative. And I would like to think that there's a renaissance coming, so to speak, because of our restrictions. And that's why I want to invest myself into the restriction well, so that I come out the other end as a person who can be an agent to benefit others, kind of thing. Not restrictions. I don't mean, I just mean if we embrace what is good about it, then the Renaissance will be more meaningful. Never mind. I don't know how to explain that.
No.
Well, you know, the thing is, there's a forced art, and then there's an authentic art, right? And you can feel when something's authentic, and when you can feel when it's not. And that feeling right there is the difference between tyranny and freedom in my eyes, because the tyrant will tell you this is authentic art and you must really believe that it's real, and if you don't, you're a bigot or whatever. And then on the flip side, you create things that are authentic and people just resonate with it naturally. There's no actual sort of debate going on about whether this thing is authentic or not. You just go, people have stood in awe before it for thousands of years, and they know it's got power. You know, it's like a everything has an embedded memeplex of meaning, and it's about really recognizing that multi-layered meaning, as opposed to trying to create a formula just so you can trick people into thinking it's authentic, you know?
Yeah, formulaic music is like that. Pop music it's enjoyable and it's easy to digest and it's popular, but when is it authentic, or when isn't it? For those who really invest themselves in authentic music, sometimes they get a sense that other formulaic music isn't authentic. But at the end of the day, who does it matter most to?
You know,
we all, yeah.
That's the thing about pop music, really quickly. Just like, people hate pop music, but you got to imagine you're writing a pop song because it's you're hungry in Hollywood or New York City, and like you have to write this pop song. It's going to be about Jello, you know. It's a commercial, and everyone in the world's going to hear it. Like, what's more authentic than that? That you have to synthesize this thing. Sometimes that can be where the truth comes out the most, you know.
You know, I've noticed that, like, we all have our biases, right, and our own defenses. And so, like, for a long time, like I said, I only listened to really metal or like the heavier musics, and it took psychedelics to break that sort of spell, where it made me recognize the value in things that weren't my vibration anymore. So like, I would listen to pop music, and like, of course there's terrible pop music out there, but somehow I found the ones where you have actual authentic people trying to tell an authentic message. And I think that authenticity, you know, it's not about pop, because there's formulaic metal out there, there's formulaic, you know, like goth music, whatever. It's all formulaic. They're just copying each other. I mean, you have to copy the meme of metalhead to make metal music in the first place, right? But
the meme of metal, yeah, good point.
Meme of metal.
But you know, there's something still real in pop music. Like for example, I listened to a band called Roixop, and like some of that music on psychedelics is clearly designed for psychedelics, and that's an authentic intent. That's an authentic experience. If you listen to, I don't know, Britney Spears on psychedelics, you're gonna be like, oh man, this girl's suffering a lot, and that's pretty much the whole thing, you know. But yeah, there's a space for it, right? Like, I think that pop music exists because there's people at that vibration who need that sort of energy. There's people who need metal, so it exists, and these different vibrations are authentic to them. They have an authentic experience when they're listening to it, which is, you know, happiness or whatever they want to call it, whatever they feel good from by consuming these things. It's not it's just that when it's part of the memeplex of corporations, you have a sort of an underlying message and cultural shaping that takes place, where you have like say a lot of songs about cheating, and so on one side you have the people experiencing cheating, they go, oh my god, like I totally identify with the song because someone cheated on me. And on the flip side, you have people going, oh, a song about cheating, I should emulate this behavior, and then they start being the problem that the song is talking about, but it's like a, you know, like an ad for one thing is actually an ad for another thing. Because let's say you promote positivity all the time, someone's going to go, well, fuck that, I'm going to go negative, and then you're going to have an entire negative market there for that person. You know, if you pop music, anytime a pop song turns on the radio, that's an ad for your favorite song, because you turn it off and you put on your own preference. And so
That's a good story. I like that.
Complete system of just constantly, you know, catering to each vibration and back and forth, you know.
Was Tupac authentic as a gangster, or did the persona consume him? And then in
Gangster
which
was
case,
definitely not real. His grandmother taught him Lacani. Gave him Lacan. He had like linguistic. Use your words is his whole thing, right?
Yeah, he was a wizard. He wasn't a gangster.
He was definitely a
then
linguist.
the gangsters who listened to his music, were they, what he says, the memes that he strings together in his raps about gangbanging? I don't know much about Tupac, but I just mean the violent aspect and the hood aspect. Is that something that when people who they relate to naturally?
Well, it's not.
And
my
it was part of what
place
is
to
authentic
out,
about it.
It's not my place to out Tupac, but I will say that, like, I'm pretty convinced. No, I am. I'm pretty convinced that he was like a closeted homosexual who struggled a lot with that in his life. There's a lot of evidence that he had, you know, some serious, like sexual relationships with men, and that was a bigger issue to his life career, that he was, you know, hiding this thing that made him stressed out.
Macho.
And so machismo has often been associated with trying to make yourself seem more masculine. Triumph of the Will is a propaganda film in World War II that the Germans had produced, Goebbels had produced, but he didn't direct it. The person who made this film, that made the German Übermensch, this you know, this concept that Nietzsche had given us, who are these Übermensch? Well, this whole generation of class conscious workers are the Übermensch, they're the Supermen of Germany, right? And so who made this video? Well, this film was made by a woman. And it's so Lena Riefenstahl made this film mainly because, you know, who could see a man more clearly than a woman? And often that takes something outside themselves to become obsessed with the nose on the statue. That's not, you know, it's not your nose, it's their nose, and then trying to amplify that ideology. So that's also interesting to me about this idea of appropriation, because often appropriation is how we see each other, through theos, through a shared lens. I like this one too. Some of these could be like artwork you buy at IKEA, right? Like I could see this being literally a poster.
This is the back of Infinity Crisis by Grant.
Oh.
Yeah.
Andreas, I like what you said.
Did you even notice the new genre?
Wait, Sviatoslav, say it again.
Did you even notice the new joiner we have here?
Yeah, so who's new iPhone? iPhone, say hello. Who are you?
A spy, Russian spy.
Yeah, we probably said
man,
spy.
that's what I was thinking. No, I saw the
Wait, who isn't a Russian spy here?
I know, that's about to say. Like, it's probably who iPhone is.
I'm a double agent.
They're all confused.
Hey, Andreas, though, I liked what you said that who can see a man better than a woman? I think a lot about androgyny and those two aspects being within ourselves. And I wonder just metaphorically or symbolically, how does the women of our soul see the man of our mind? You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting to think that those two aspects are within ourselves, but the yin has to witness the yang, but the yang needs the yin to see it. Vice versa.
That's going to be kind of the interesting thing about androgyny, is that you start to lose both in the process instead of gaining both. I really like the idea of seeing the femininity and the goddess and masculinity, because then you're able to play both parts of of consciousness, and as time goes on, that's awesome. The problem, though, you know, in transhumanism in general, beyond transsexuality, is transhumanism. Once we become you know, cybernetic beings and mutate our DNA, and we're able to live to be longer lived, that will probably reduce some of the emphasis we've made on differences that we love so much. It's really cool right now that we're categorizing and meta-tagging differences, because that way we're able to use those differences in order to see each other, and then we can ascribe them like meta tags and hashtags. You can subscribe to a stereotype about yourself and unsubscribe to a stereotype about yourself. And I think that's a really powerful yet liberating experience, because you're able to say, well, I don't like watermelon, or I do love watermelon, even though. And like, that's the kind of thing that we need to work towards, is just being allowed to be these things. If we completely become without any difference, and we're all one monocropped potato, then all it's going to take is one problem without a solution to wipe us all out instantly.
It seems to me that there's often simplicity moves to complexity, and things naturally diversify and balkanize, so to speak. There often is a battle somewhat between objectivity and subjectivity. How I talked to my nephew about this with ice cream. Objectively, there is ice cream in the world that exists. Subjectively, mint ice cream is the best in the world. I ask myself, what is most important to a human being? That we all agree on an objective fact, or that we have subjective feelings? We find ourselves getting in trouble when we're looking for subjectivity and with something objective, and vice versa. We have to honor subjective opinions because subjective thoughts change, but objective facts don't so much. But how humans arrange things and what we want to admit or believe has sometimes less to do with what is objectively true, but more about what is subjectively true.
Well, we subjectively interpret objective reality, right? So no matter what, at no point are we actually making an objective, like, even if you encounter an objective fact for whatever reason, first of all, it's using subjective language to articulate it. Second, your lexicon might not align with exactly what the meaning of each word is. So your interpretation of objectivity remains subjective no matter what. And your interpretation of other people's interpretations is also subjective as well. You don't have an objective lens no matter what, but we try to as much as possible. And so we near objectivity, but we fall apart at the hypothesis most of the time, because like hypothesis should be you should have multiple hypotheses at the same time instead of just one that just goes, this is the answer to what all the evidence means. And it's like, well, who knows? Like, there's countless factors you can't factor in, you know?
Well said.
Can you zoom in on a bit on that meme so more people can see it bigger? That the demiurge one with Knuckles. Perfect. Sure, buddy. The demiurge is the reason you can't ascend.
What is demiurge? I don't know.
Demiurge is like the creator of the universe in some religious beliefs, you know.
Oh, okay, thank you.
If someone has a better explanation than that, I don't have all the information on hand. Sorry.
In Platonic and Middle Platonic and Neoplatonic schools of philosophy, the demiurge is an artisan-like figure responsible for fashioning and maintaining the physical universe. The Gnostics adopted the term demiurge. You could say it's kind of like the architect, you know.
So the creator is the reason.
There's a branch of people who believe that our reality is a prison, basically, and so they blame God for our existence and go, we have to fight the demiurge's illusion and blah 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 blah. I think that's just an ego response in the face of, you know, more powerful things than yourself. You don't actually know the intent of any of this stuff. They just read it in a book and they go, this is what is true now, you know.
Can the creation ever overcome the creator, the original source, or does it become a separate entity? It makes me think of like the golem, the Judaic myth of Prague, where I lived. That, long story short, there's a rabbi who saw that the people were being taken advantage of, and and they were poor, and there was this warring tribe. So he shaped out of clay a golem to protect them. But then by giving it life, it was again treated like a Frankenstein's monster, and it had all these unintended consequences where it destroyed more than it was intended to do. So I wonder what restrictions are put on a creation by a creator of it.
You know, can the characters in a book kill its creators? Can your computer give you a heart attack, or can you just push the off switch anytime you want? Like it depends on the nature of the creator, of course, but the idea would be that, like, until you give AI a body, it can't kill you, you know? So
well, like a virus program or a phishing hacking software, something like that.
AI could kill you by turning up your thermostat, you know? I mean, like,
sure,
AI,
AI sure, but I could just go outside, you know? Like, the thing is that at that point...
Do you know what? Have you seen the movie AI about the little boy? You know what I'm talking about? The robot boy?
Artificial intelligence.
Okay,
with
do you know at the end of the movie where he meets those crazy looking things? You know what those are? Yeah. Those aren't aliens. You know what those are? That's AI. That's AI that's evolved. So the whole idea Kubrick had before he died for the AI movie was that, because he wrote it and he had all the plans for it, and then he died, Spielberg had to finish it, was that AI was put in charge of us to save the world. And so it saves the world by wiping out 90% of us. And then it does this by flooding the earth, by melting the ice caps, which it doesn't take much. You've got lasers in space, right? From the Star Wars Defense Fund. So they've said, and also you could just nuke a volcano. So in certain places, it would wipe out certain areas, water would flow, and then it would steam. You'd have this increased hydrogen level that would then allow for carbon to be consumed.
They could kill us at a very effective level. Yes.
What does rainforest consume, right? It breathes oxygen, but what does it intake? It inhales carbon dioxide. What are we producing so much of right now? So maybe AI is actually just preparing to wipe us out and save the world. Not all of us, but
right?
Replace
although you know, there's also the possibility that they'll integrate with us, right?
Well, that's the only way, right?
The notion is that we'll be augmented by machines instead of destroyed by them, because the point isn't just to save the planet; it's to save humanity. And if the machine concludes that saving humanity is to kill humanity, that machine's fucking stupid as shit, and that's just a failed AI. And I think
maybe not letting all of the humans continue to produce all the time.
Controlled, you know, arc your way to a balance, right?
What does the word AI mean in Chinese? Love. Check it out.
That's interesting.
I
was going to say something. Oh, fuck, I forgot.
But that's part of the danger of, or not just danger, but part of what, in order to make something intelligent artificially, it needs to think for itself. But if something thinks for itself, it won't be controlled by you anymore. You won't be able to determine how it's thinking for itself. And that is part of the maybe paradox of good and evil, is when we create something like the nuclear bomb in order to be a deterrence from nuclear war, we created the potential for creating a nuclear bomb for evil, I guess. So
I read a book a few years back. It's called Ancestors. It's a graphic novel, and it's basically a transhumanist graphic novel. You have a scientist who's, you know, he's created essentially a network, a neural link that everyone accesses that links them to the internet. So when you look at someone, you can see an AI, you can see their profile and all their information and stuff. And so what happens is he creates an AI and gives it a body, and it's so much more advanced than what humans can actually understand that, like, it immediately recognizes how to fix humanity. And so what it does is it just transforms, it just alters their DNA structure to make them into one of him. So they all become sort of biomechanical demigods who can alter the structure of reality and explore multiple universes, create their own universes, create their own, you know, time distortion pockets. And it's a sort of like you know, once the turning point, it's like the event horizon. It's the end of history, essentially. It's the object at the end of the transcendental object at the end of space time, where we reach a level where we are able to essentially, you know, the line between imaginary and reality will become a choice, sort of thing, you know, and that might point to a sub-reality, like, you know, like the Matrix has us all trapped in a VR construct, right? But what's the difference? If you can create a sub-reality within reality, you just have a fractal multiverse setting up that everyone is constantly going down the rabbit hole into, you know, like we create, for example, video games, right? Video games are a subdimension that we access via medium. We create an entire world with its own laws, rules of physics, and all that, and then we access it through these sort of artifacts that allow us.
Is creation an act of love? When we create, do we want it to be better than us? And in which case, if it is better than us, if it thinks better than us, if the machine operates better than us, is faster than us, how does that propel something? Why is it a gift to create something that it has a part of you, but is an improvement upon your design?
Well, we're trying to perfect ourselves, right? Like humanity, all of history is basically us frustrated that things aren't perfect. And like we are actually really, really frustrated when things are not perfect. The moment that things are not perfect, we go, it's a piece of shit, and like it doesn't deserve to exist. But it's because we know, I think, somewhere that there is a perfect reality just beyond our perception, just beyond our subjectivity, that is actually real, that this is how the universe should actually be, and that there's something inside of us, perhaps in our perception, that needs to change, but also in our capacity to create. You know, like people want perfection. We're flawed people trying to make perfection who don't realize that perfection can't fade away. And so you can't make something in mortal time, like in time, that is perfect, because it's going to dissolve and become imperfect. So the only thing that's perfect really is the self-perfecting system of nature itself. Like,
yeah.
Well, I think this has been pretty beautiful, man. But I know it's probably like in Latvia, like 1 a.m. or 2 or something worse than that. So I want the guy to get a little rest. Sviatoslav, do you have any closing thoughts before we start to end this on a high note and we'll get ready to set up the next one? Because I think we're definitely going to be doing more of these.
My brain was shutting down a while ago. Like,
poor guy. Oh, I knew it. I was like,
yeah.
this poor guy.
that's his bedtime.
It's 1:30 midnight, 1:30
Oh,
midnight.
you baby boy. That's awesome. If he goes to
I
bed
don't
before
know.
5 a.m., he's not evil. That's my metric. Well, cool. All right. I mean, man, I really do appreciate that you guys came out and we did this. I'm going to turn off the screen sharing. Do you want to turn off the screen share, Vince, so we can get on wider shots? Thanks. So guys, thank you so much for watching this, and you guys at home, but you guys also, thank you guys for making this. This is only possible because we worked together, and Darren put this together. So thank Darren for making sure this happened. And we're going to make more episodes of this show. I don't know what the show is yet, but I think the memes we don't yet understand was kind of one of the earlier ideas that Daniel threw out, and but it's an advanced chat nonetheless. So let's just keep the dialogue flowing, keep the memes pumping. And if you're finding this on YouTube or on Odyssey or on one of these other sites, jump into our crazy group. We have philosophy memes for like, advanced philosophy memes for like, and then there's Uber memes, which are like, oh my. So, you can figure out what part of the pool is too deep for you, and it'll be fun.
I'm gonna check out the Uber one, but philosopher memes is
Uber's
just
not on Uber's not on Facebook. Uber's the new experimental thing. It's in Riot and Matrix. It's like a perma-web, uncensorable. It's a whole new ground. It's pretty scary out there. So I don't know.
Wild West.
It's pretty wild. It's definitely wild. So all right, I hope that you guys had a great time, and hit us up soon.
Have a good one, man.
Peace.
Yes. Let's do it soon. It's a new theme. Next time. Later.
Peace.
Don't follow your heart, it might only let you down. Follow only reason, emotions lead to treason.